Today's video is part 2 of the sauerkraut making process. Here are my 2 fermentation vessels that I had set up for that first batch, my little Sichuan pickle jars. So every day, during the first couple days when you still see the air bubbles popping out through the water lock, you want to take off the lid and just use that wooden stick to press down on the cabbage and release those air bubbles. Now those air bubbles are created as a byproduct of the lacto fermentation process. Now it's important to release those bubbles because if there's bubbles, that creates an aerobic environment with oxygen where bad bacteria and yeast and mold can grow that can make you sick, and we don't want that. So press those out to maintain an anaerobic environment with no oxygen. That helps maintain the correct environment for the beneficial bacteria for the sauerkraut. Now, because those first 2 cabbages were so teeny tiny, I went ahead and made a second batch with a nice big cabbage. And this is my 3rd fermentation vessel. It's the same basic idea, but it is a different style. And this one actually comes with ceramic weights, which you put right in there at the top. The Sichuan pickle jars don't have those, but this is the same basic style. I think this is actually called a sauerkraut crock, and here we're adding water for the water seal. And here are all 3 jars set together, and we'll just leave those there and let the bubbles pop out. Look at all those bubbles that have come up. I think this was the next day after I had set this batch up. So same thing, just press down, release those bubbles to maintain an anaerobic environment. So that helps keep your sauerkraut healthy. And once that's done, you'll go ahead and put the lid back on and then add water to top it off. This particular fermentation vessel does have a very shallow water lock, so especially during the summer months when it's hot, I have to keep a really close eye on it and then top it off even twice a day when it's very warm. Otherwise, I usually check all 3 once a day and top off the water as needed. And then you only really need to release the bubbles for the first couple of days, and after that it kind of just does its thing. And then after about 2 weeks, the sauerkraut is ready to get put into jars. And so here I'm actually taking some paper towels and soaking up that water from the water lock. And then I'm actually wearing gloves here just because sauerkraut has such a strong flavor. It gets into your skin, it gets on everything. It's a very strong smell. And here I'm removing those cabbage cores and also that flat folded leaf of cabbage that help to basically keep all of the sauerkraut itself submerged under the liquid in that anaerobic environment. And the core and the cabbage leaf are a little bit brown from oxidation, but that's fine. We don't worry about that. And here we're just taking that sauerkraut, which looks beautiful. This is exactly what it's supposed to look like, and we're using that wide mouth funnel to put it in the glass quart jar, and then you just tamp it down layer by layer. Again, you basically just want to squeeze everything together so that way there's no oxygen in the jars. And that first batch, so those 2 Sichuan pickle jars, made about 2.5 quarts of sauerkraut. And this is one of the other reasons why we save those leaves. Since the sauerkraut is going to be in the fridge for a little while, you just take those same leaves and you put them on top of the sauerkraut, and then you take one of the cabbage cores and you put that on top, and just like in the fermentation vessel, that helps keep the sauerkraut beneath the liquid so that it stays nice and fresh in the fridge and doesn't grow mold. As long as it's inside that sauerkraut liquid brine, it's going to be totally fine in the fridge for a while. And here I'm just topping off the jar with some of that leftover brine from the fermentation vessel. And here I'm installing gaskets on the lid. That just helps to contain the sauerkraut smell while the jars are in the fridge. Some people are lucky and you have a separate fermentation refrigerator out in the garage, like a kimchi fridge, which is great. But for everybody else, we do want to keep that smell contained. And then you'll wash and dry the jars and label them with the contents and date, and then you're good to go. Thank you for watching. And here is just a little added bonus. This is my personal favorite sauerkraut, made with pineapple, ginger, and turmeric. You can even see those little flecks of black pepper in there. This particular sauerkraut is amazing for digestion, immunity. It's delicious. It's a little bit sweeter. This is my personal favorite. I don't necessarily like the regular sauerkraut. I make it well and I'm happy to make it for other people, but this is my personal favorite. Bitte have fun.